Yeah, I'll just start my introduction for people who don't know me. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. So, yeah, okay. I've been a professor at the Buck Institute for about 15 years now. Hold on, sorry. There's a issue with audio. Yeah, so I've, okay. Now is it clear or?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I have sometimes internet issues. So after I give my introduction, I'll take my video off so I can you can still see the slide. So I have appointments also at UCSF and USC, and I want to say that I fell in love with this field of fasting and how nutrition can play a role in influencing aging since in my early 20s, and since then I've been doing research work come out of our lab, which has made us sort of set up this company. So we've, as I'll talk to you about the process of glycation and how we can actually slow it down with these combination of commonly used supplements. And I wanted to, we wanted to share, make it available and sort of help translate our work that we're doing in the lab to people. And that overeating or excess calories are toxic to us. And one of our working hypotheses in the lab is that it's this process of glycation that really drives the damaging effects of overeating or sugar. So and so we're, first of all, I just want to get this just clear at the outset. I'll show you some data that obesity is also linked with shortening of lifespan and accelerated mortality. But most importantly, I think it really debilitates life in general. Obesity and overnutrition is a risk factor for a number of diseases, as you can see, that are listed here. But the most important killers for risk factors for mortality are cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and Alzheimer's, and sort of neurodegenerative diseases. And there are studies showing that even a small increase in glucose in your serum levels, even in normal people, is tied with lower cognition. So we think there is a lot of room, even if you weren't to get an extended lifespan, there's a lot of room to improve your health and sort of enhance function and enhance your health by eating optimally. But despite this knowledge, we're sort of helpless, because despite all this knowledge, as you can see, the obesity trends around the world are actually going up. So if you can see, in 1990s, this graph shows the prevalence of obesity, which means the number of people who are above a BMI of 30. So you can see it was about in the 20s or 10s to 20s in the early 90s. And now we have reached a point where in the US, 40% of the people have a BMI of over 30. And these numbers are only growing up. And this is believed to be about 50% by 2030. But more importantly, almost 2/3 of the people are overweight. And like I said, this but this sort of the importance of fasting is not just for these are the people at highest risk, but it's for everybody, because I think if you eat not only the appropriate appropriate calories, but at appropriate times, you can improve health. So, and what's behind this epidemic of obesity? So one of the graphs that I find really fascinating is this study, looking at the sugar consumption per capita. If you see how we've been how the sugar consumption has been increasing by 1700 from 1700s to now, it's kind of astounding. We're eating almost 20 to 50 times more sugar per person than we were eating before. And if you look at in this other bar in this graph here on the right side are the obesity trends, how they've been going up in the last 100 years. So there wasn't a problem in the early 1900s, but you can see what's happening recently. And that's explains really well why the obesity risk is, the levels are going up so dramatically. So the way and so like I said, obesity not only is a risk factor for many diseases, but is also accelerates mortality. So on average, people over a BMI of 30, for example, they live 5 to 7 years shorter than the average people. And you can see here, this is data from 500,000 people. A BMI of around, they estimate a BMI around 22 to 25 is sort of optimal to have the lowest risk of mortality. So, but I want to say that I think with obesity, as you know, comes a lot of sort of questions about willpower and blame. But I mean, we look at it differently. I think all organisms we think they're all hardwired to overeat. And this is sort of captured in this idea called the thrifty gene hypothesis. And the idea is that, animals, including us, we've always lived through periods of relative food scarcity. So it makes sense that there are systems in place that make us overeat, because we were not, imagine how life was thousands of years ago. Your next meal was not assured. So it makes sense that all species, including humans, are pretty much evolved so that they overeat, because so it's sort of an insurance policy, because you don't know when the next meal might come in. So we think also food addiction. So the different sort of processes that are in place to overeat and to enhance your nutrition would be increase food storage, increase food utilization under periods of nutrition, and also food addiction. So imagine if you encountered a fruit tree, there's no point just eating a little bit. If in those times you'd imagine you'd overeat because to make sure that it would last you a little longer. But all this becomes a problem in our current state. Since if you imagine especially the last 20, 30 years, we've really, the access to food is so much easier, causing a lot of problems. So so one of my question my lab sort of asks, and that sort of keeps us up, is thinking like, is there a way to turn down this consumption of carbohydrates, especially, and slightly? And if you would turn this down, if there's a safe way to turn this down, would you actually improve your health? So we are interested in this idea that it's as we sort of go deeper into this, we find that it's not sugar that's the most damaging thing. It's something called advanced glycation end products. So some of you might have heard this for the first time, but this is something that you're all familiar with. Every time you cook, it's the product that sort of browning of food, that caramelization, that is formation of advanced glycation end products. When you have sugar and amino acids and you heat it up, they form AGEs, also called AGEs, and essentially these make the food tasty, but they're also sticky, and they cause damage when it happens inside the cell. So unfortunately, this is also happening in our body, and not just while we're cooking. And we think there's data to suggest that glucose, when you use glucose, you create byproducts of metabolism, which form these advanced glycation end products, which drive the aging process. But also, more importantly, if you're susceptible to diabetes, it's also linked with a number of diabetic complications. So, for example, AGEs are linked, glycation linked with diabetic retinopathy, and it's one of the leading causes of blindness. Diabetic nephropathy, there's kidney inflammation that is also driven by advanced glycation end products. We've done a bit of work on showing that neuropathy, where your autonomic nervous system isn't working as well, glycation also drives that process. On top of that, cardiovascular diseases, which is the largest risk factor, like I said, for mortality and death, is also driven by glycation. And then we recently got a lot of interest in dementia and stroke. So for example, patients with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's have 2 to 4 times the levels of advanced glycation end products in their brain. So this, unfortunately, this has been a hard problem to tackle. And there were some prior studies almost 2 decades ago where they tried to block these agents, but these, though there was a lot of promise, these drugs failed because of side effects. And that is an important point I want to mention, because that was one of the reasons why we have actually chosen commonly used supplements to fight glycation. This is just a more in-depth diagram, just showing that every cell that uses glucose, while it's using glucose, it makes this toxic product called methyl glyoxal, which reacts with your proteins, which is here, and it reacts with your proteins to form these glycated products, which you can see become more complex molecules. So all I want you to take from this slide is that as you use glucose, you create these toxic byproducts which react with other macromolecules, creating these complex structures in the cells, and which sort of, for example, reduce the elasticity of our blood vessels. So it can also drive increase in blood pressure. So I won't get again into this experiment, but this is how we identified that if we were to take 5 different components, we actually had a much higher protection against glycation. So the way we did this was we took cells and you expose them to glycation agents that cause glycation. And then we said, okay, which compounds can protect against that? And all you have to look here on the y-axis is the processes of neurons, right? So when you damage them here, like here, it's damaged, the process is shortened. But if you keep adding these drugs, the processes reappear. They can prevent the damage. And what I want to show you here is in pink. In red is a single compound, but in pink are 5 compounds added together. So you can see now, if you add all the 5 compounds together, the processes become are restored much faster, much lower doses. So these 5 components are, like I said, on the back are in our supplement. And I want to, a lot of people ask this question, but I know these different compounds. What is so special about GLYLO? I want to mention, want you to look at this carefully. The amount levels of these compounds that we've added is not what you find in a multivitamin pill. This is much higher levels, because we think that's what you need to get this protection from glycation. A multivitamin pill will not do it. And we've done a lot of titrations. You need it at fairly high levels. And we recommend at least 2 to 3 pills of our product to sort of deal with this glycation. So here's some data. First of all, I want to show. So I said that this would work. And we have some proof now it works. So MGO is the age precursor, and MGH1 is the advanced glycation end product. And you can see the animals that are treated with GLYLO in red have reduced levels. They almost halve the levels of these glycation products. And that's really remarkable, because this has not been achievable before. And we think this is something very exciting for the field. So we were doing all this to study aging and diabetic complications, but we got a sort of pleasant surprise when we fed the animals the 5 components of GLYLO. And what you're seeing here in the top graph is the amount of food they consume over time. So you can see these are mice on this diet for 150 days. In black is the amount of food consumed, but in red, when they're on GLYLO, they're actually consuming about 25% less calories. Like I said, we were very interested to sort of slightly turn down the consumption of calories, and it looked like that's what was achieved by giving these GLYLO. But the effect on body weight is very interesting. So mice will normally, like all zoo animals, if you just let them eat what they want, and humans, we end up gaining weight, as you can see here. So they go from 30 to 35 grams. But when they're on GLYLO, they actually drop in weight, but then it's kept steady at about 25 grams. So this is a normal mice, no disease or anything. Even in normal mice, we see an improvement. And this is what you would want to get sort of optimal health benefits in a normal mouse. And to test this, first of all, we asked, how do they handle glucose? Because we had good reasons to believe that this improves insulin sensitivity. So glucose tolerance is very important because every time you eat a meal, the glucose shoots up. So like, for example, at 0 time point, a meal or glucose is put into the system and the animal tries to bring down, the glucose goes into the system and then it's removed and assimilated into the different tissues. Now, if you can do that better, then you are what would be called more insulin sensitive. Insulin is the hormone that's trying to take out the glucose from the system and storing it as fat or distributing it to the muscles. So we find that animals, when treated with GLYLO, they're actually much better at dealing with this glucose. And this translates into overall lower fasting glucose. And I want to say that we have some preliminary data from a few people who are taking GLYLO, including myself, and we found a reduction in glucose. And I was pre-diabetic. My glucose had been at like 110 for like at least the last 8-9 years. And I've been taking GLYLO for like the last almost 2 years. And now my glucose levels, fasting glucose levels are about 89. So and like we are like a few more other people have also seen similar else, but we haven't quite done we're getting ready to do a clinical trial on this to get more data. Furthermore, we also test insulin tolerance. So basically you inject insulin into an animal and you ask how quickly do they drop glucose. And you can see GLYLO actually makes the an organism insulin sensitive. This is really important because as you age, our ability to sort of assimilate glucose is declining. So that means we're becoming insulin resistant. And unfortunately, this is not even diabetes. This is happening in all of us over time as we age. So it's really nice to have something that likely has very little side effects that you could take to improve. So then we did an experiment. We thought, okay, this is very promising. How about we see if we can treat one of the most commonly used models of obesity? So this is a real picture from a mouse, which is deficient. So there is a hormone called leptin. So when you eat the hormone leptin is released from the fat cells, which tells the body to stop eating, right? Now, in this animal, this leptin receptor is missing. So they can't sense this hormone. And you can see the result of that. These animals become almost double the size, right? And so we asked what would happen if we treat these animals. And not only do they become double the size, they actually get all these diabetic complications. So they get like essentially insulin resistance and their glucose goes high and they get all these diabetic pathologies I was talking about. Their eyes, their eyesight weakens, they get neuropathy, their kidneys is affected and essentially increased risk of dementia, et cetera as well. So all those things are in a model where there's essentially accelerated aging. So we fed GLYLO to these mice, so we got even more dramatic effect on the body weight. So you can see here in black are the animals that gain weight, and you can see they weigh about 45 grams now. But when kept on GLYLO, we can bring down this body weight to about 30 grams. And this is at the highest dose. And this is the medium dose, and this is the lowest dose. So this is what I was saying about using multivitamins. I think we've sort of tried to optimize the dose where we would get the best effects. And according to your body weight, you might need more or less. So it's like some women, for example, who are taking this, they're under I think they're in the region of 120 odd pounds. They say they feel enough effects with even one pill. So I think it totally depends on. It'll vary between person to person, but we think at least 2 pills might be the average, but some people might benefit with 1 pill, but some people might need even 3 pills. So this is the other result, which I think is one of the most remarkable results we've seen, where these animals, you can see in black, right? So we started with about 20 animals and half the animals died in 6 months. But when kept on the supplement, you can see here in red, the anti-ages, which is the GLYLO, not a single animal died. And we were just like amazed that, wow, there can be an intervention that totally prevents the pathologies in this mice. And I'm not going to show the other pathology, but their liver was improved, their heart function was improved, and resulting in overall improvement in health. So this is one of the most, experiments we're very proud of. We tried One of the questions with a lot of weight loss pills and things that you use to improve insulin sensitivity is, will it be good for you in the long term? So we did an experiment where we actually looked at the aging of the animals, because like I said, if we take good care of our health and if it's done right, it should result in an extended lifespan. This is a large number of animals. There's actually 40, about 85 animals total. We started this experiment when the animals were 2 years old. So mice live about 2.5, 3 years. This is equivalent to a person being about 60 to 70 years old, right? So what's remarkable is that when we give these animals GLYLO, you can see we can really push the lifespan, and it looks like almost a 20-30% extension. And most importantly, we're not just getting an improvement in the mean lifespan, we can actually push the maximum lifespan of these animals, which kind of potentially argues that this could be a real anti-aging sort of intervention that can actually extend lifespan. And I want to add that just limiting calories is actually not this good in mice if they're that old. So we think we've got an intervention here that's even better than simply reducing calories. So we're very excited about this, and we're studying this further. Okay, what about other aspects of health? So I showed mainly data on improvement on insulin sensitivity and extended lifespan. But one of the other assays that we commonly use in mice is just its ability to, how good is the neuromuscular coordination. So you kind of you kind of do a test on mice to ask how well they can balance on a beam, on a rotate. Seconds. But if they've been on GLYLO for 3-4 months, you can see it improves its ability to stay on this rotating rod. Okay, so the final slide I want to show you that GLYLO we think also improves insulin. Also improves our ability to sort of exercise and move. So normally we are finding that animals are moving a little more, sometimes almost double when they're taking GLYLO. But we got an even more exciting result when we introduced a running wheel into the cage of the mice. We actually found that these mice were able to run a lot more. So it just argued that maybe we've improved the endurance of these animals. And that's very likely because we think with this kind of intervention, you would also improve the mitochondrial health. And we're doing some really interesting experiments where we're finding that if you take mice which are taking GLYLO and also exercise them, their health improves even further. So I want to just summarize what I showed to you. What I showed is that we believe that the reason sugar addiction takes place and I want to system in place which tell you once you get food that you've got to go eat more. Sorry, my internet is unstable. It got disconnected. I'll just share the screen again. So as I was summarizing, that the process of glycation, where I got disconnected, was it? Yeah, okay. Essentially restricting our diet. And secondly, we think by reducing these ages, so and we think we can get a combined effect of like fasting and exercise and reducing ages using GLYLO to sort of inhibit the production of ages and have this improvement in the cellular health. Okay. So my lab is actually, I want to say this is almost a decade of work where we started a lot of these experiments using a little worm, which only lives about 30 days, where we found that glycation was quite detrimental, to then translating a lot of the work into neurons and now mice. And we are beginning, clinical trials as well. And a lot of people we're getting very useful data from a lot of people who are taking GLYLO as well. And I want to just sort of explain some of the things we put on our product based on. So based on this data, we and some of the evidence that people who are taking it, we think this boosts energy and curbs our cravings and helps switch over to fat utilization. And also an added part I talk about, it actually reduces inflammation and damage to DNA. And this is in the short term. And in the long term, we think this is still to be seen in humans, but in mice, it's very clear that we can improve muscle recovery and improve endurance. And I've been taking it for a long time, and I feel like my endurance to run and all that has definitely improved, and it can promote healthy aging. And furthermore, we're actually now studying a lot of we're doing experiments to see if it improves brain health and it slows the risk of dementia, and also at the same time does it improve? It's a combination of improving metabolic health and brain health. And finally, I want to just thank people in my lab who've really been behind this, and my collaborators at UCSF, UC Berkeley, and the Buck. So with that, I'll stop talking so I can give time to take questions. I'll bring myself back online. Happy to answer any questions or some things I may have gone very fast on. Oh, you're muted. Do you want to unmute yourself?
How soon can we get it, please?
Oh, hold on. I can't hear your question.
You
Can you say it again?
How
Yes,
soon? How soon can we get it?
Oh, it is available. Like I said, if you go on the website now, it's available in multiple countries in addition to the USA. So you should be able to get that. Yeah.
So this is Paul. I have a question. So that was very helpful, by the way. Thank you. My question is this: I take a lot of stuff, excuse me, and I noticed that I take everything that's in your product except for the piperine or piperine. So can you get benefit just because I take V vitamins and alpha lipoic acid and niacinamide, or is it really the combination of those ingredients in those ratios that allow for the benefit?
Yeah, no, that's an. We definitely think it's the combination is very critical. Vitamins you don't need to take. For example, there's no need to buy expensive NMN or NR-based supplements, where we think with this we can get quite a lot of benefits. And we measured the levels of all these nicotinamide metabolites. They are quite high. And, I think the effects of nicotinamide don't just come from those metabolites. But if you need to, and the other question, what's the potential downside of increasing from 1 pill to 2 or to 3 daily? Yeah, I think this is a very important question. I mean, I take 2 to 3 pills, and I want to say, I think you have to sort of monitor yourself and your need, and it also can depend on the other things and supplements you're taking. And some days, I generally take it after my meal, but it's really it's going to vary between person to person. But and some people, for example, if you have gut issues or thyroid issues, I think it's not lipoic acid seems to interfere, so I wouldn't take higher doses with that. So I think you'd have to really experiment and to see. The other question Ellie has is about women with PCOS. Do you suggest? Actually, that's an excellent question. We have not seen. We are actually doing a lot of those experiments now in mice, but we don't know the answer to that. Would you need a higher dose? But what you could get your glucose measured and examination like 3 months later after taking, and that will give you an idea. But I would say, yeah, it's possible 2 to 3 pills might be good for PCOS. What is the benefit or things to watch out for if you have trouble keeping weight on? Yeah, that's an excellent question.